Welcome to FinTech Fun Talks, hosted by Copper Canvas Ads Agency. My name is Christy, and today our guest is Lacie Thorne. She is the founder of Fidgetals, and she has her own business in fashion, fintech, and sustainability. She teaches fashion studies and is writing a textbook on fashion sustainability for Bloomsbury Publishing. Welcome, Lacie.
Thank you for having me today.
We're so happy to have you here. So let's start with getting a little bit of your background.
Yeah, so I went to Parsons School of Design in New York and graduated with my degree in fashion design and fell into a niche of celebrity clothing design, as one does. I was the first person hired for the Jennifer Lopez brand for Kohl's, and that turned into the Nicki Minaj line for Sears and the Adam Levine line for Kmart, all under the leadership of Tommy Hilfiger. He was my boss.
That's awesome. Those are big names and a really big name to be working for. So how did that shape the way you viewed the fashion industry and your role in it?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, in our endeavors, I would fly from our New York design studio to the artist's home in Los Angeles and talk with them about the aesthetic of their line, kind of go through their wardrobe, talk about the color and the direction, and bring that information back not only to the New York design studio, but then fly overseas to our vendor manufacturing partners to help kind of oversee the manufacturing portion of the line. And that's where I really started to develop some ideas about sustainability.
I'm sure. Like we all hear the stories, but you were able to see it firsthand. What were some of the things that stood out to you the most?
Yeah, the just the scale at which the fashion industry operates was immediately apparent to me. We were working on low cost, high volume apparel lines and actually witnessing the scale at which the fashion industry operates really made me start thinking about, if this volume is present in this factory at this time, this is just one style in one brand inside of one store within the entire apparel ecosystem. And I started thinking about the raw cotton used to grow the denim for those jeans and the pesticides and the dyeing processes and the human labor and the transportation. It just all came into focus for me at that time.
It's interesting. I think once your eyes are open to that, then you begin seeing it everywhere as well. For me, it was just reading a couple of articles similar to what you were saying, just helping people to open their eyes to that and see what is happening. And then when I go to my local department store or even grocery stores, that type of thing where you see the mass amount of items that are available to me, I can buy whatever I want whenever I want. There's really no need for me to have a want for anything. And so when I started seeing that and thinking, okay, I could buy these clothes today. I could wear them. I'll probably wear them for maybe a couple of years and then what? Then do what with them? I've got a local Goodwill that I can give them to, or I can trash them. I could try to recycle a little bit within my home, but let's be honest, that doesn't happen as much as I might want to think.
No, it really does.
So it is kind of a scary, eye-opening situation. And so I'm curious about your thoughts on that and where we go from there.
Yeah. So after I had kind of been participating in the fast fashion industry for a few years, I kind of started feeling like I was part of the problem rather than part of the solution. And I had the opportunity to move overseas and live in Hong Kong, where I switched from fast fashion to working in luxury fashion. And I became a magazine stylist and an editor, and then an advertising and communications executive working throughout the Asia Pacific region. And I started handling garments that were not designed to be thrown away. Like nobody's tossing out a Burberry jacket. And I started to do a little bit of research into the secondary life of garments and what influences resale and how garments are perceived by the consumer. Because at the end of the day, there wasn't a tremendous amount of difference between a Prada pair of jeans and a JLo pair of jeans, except for the price point and the advertising and the consumer perception behind that. And so being able to understand the difference in that consumer perception in that life cycle was really eye-opening for me.
And I know that that perception is something that motivates you with your current business, the one that you founded. Let's talk a little bit about that and your mission there.
Yeah. So when I finally left Hong Kong and I repatriated to the United States, and I started working as an instructor in a fashion studies, a liberal arts college, I started doing a little bit of research into informing myself more about resale. And during the pandemic, I used my extra time to uh, do a little bit of grad school applications, and I found a MBA program with a focus on sustainability. And it was through that graduate school program that I came up with the idea for my company, Fidgetals, and received the early mentorship to really get it off of the ground.
And how long have you been in business with Fidgetal?
We started in 2021.
2021, right. And so having that time during the pandemic, like look at what you've been able to make and turn around. And I know that a big portion of this is again, maybe the word recycling isn't right. You can tell me if you want to use a different word, but recycling clothing in a way that gives an increase in the longevity of the life cycle for it, puts it into the hands of people who maybe wouldn't otherwise, right? Like looking at the everyday person, they are shopping for fast fashion. And so let's talk about how that is changing, or what your goal is to change the mindset of people and the way that they're looking at fashion and the way they're shopping for fashion.
When I applied to the grad school program, my thesis was that we
Mhm.
could do all these really complicated initiatives in the fashion industry to reduce water consumption and improve the chemical makeup of pesticides and improve labor conditions overseas. Or we could just take advantage of the products that have already been manufactured and divert them either from uh, donations or from the global waste stream. And the donations are really interesting because we donate so much secondary clothing in the United States. Only about 15% of it is recirculated in the American system. 85% of our clothing donations are sent offshore to places like Ghana and Chile, where we have so flooded their textile and garment industries that they have less legislation around disposal and have literal mountains and deserts of fast fashion that is not biodegrading in these locations, which is really interesting.
It is. And it's almost like we have said, okay, here we are, first world country, take all of our trash and deal with it. No, no, we're giving it as a gift. It's for you. Use this clothing. It ends up being, like you said, these mountains of clothing that will not biodegrade. I know there are a lot of industry issues related to this. So talk about that.
With the overproduction that we see in the fashion industry, we can trace it back to a brand incentive. Brands are not incentivized to create quality clothing that lasts beyond the first generation user because brands don't get paid if a clothing item sells on Poshmark or eBay. So, what we've created is a resale marketplace that every time a garment trades hands, a little bit of commission goes back through the ownership lineage, meaning every person that's ever owned that item, including the brand. And what we've
Mm.
done is to basically create a vertical incentive system where brands are incentivized to create and produce quality clothing that lasts beyond the first generation user. And consumers are incentivized to purchase that clothing, take good custodial care of it, and when it's just sitting in their closet, remove it back into the circular economy. Everyone's working for the promise of those future royalty exchanges.
And how is this being adopted? What are you seeing there?
It's been a really great process being a founder. I've been welcomed into a variety of communities of entrepreneurship and innovation mentors. And it has really
Mm.
taken this long just to get to a point of developing a software prototype. We're starting to talk to brands. We're doing customer discovery, getting feedback from people about how this system is actually going to work. But we're really excited to be able to start launching later this summer.
Yeah, that's exciting. It is something that I think people may not be aware of, but it takes a long time to lay that foundation and make sure that you have everything in order so that when you do launch it, you don't have any of the hurdles that may come up from being unprepared. So that's an exciting place to be, and that you get to be the face of that. You get to be face to face with the people that you want to work with and come up with solutions that will work for both of you.
We really started gaining traction last fall when I took a FinTech accelerator course at the Nashville Entrepreneur Center. And it was a wonderful opportunity to start connecting with people in fintech and gave me the opportunity to start pitching about this idea on different stages. And it was through those pitch competitions and opportunities that I started developing a community of mentors around me, of people saying, I know a guy who can help out with this, or I know a person who knows about payment systems. And being able to move things forward from that direction is really when things started to gain life and move forward.
Yeah, that's really invaluable to have the right people around you, and especially those who are experts in their fields.
Mhm. Yeah.
Especially when you are the buck stops with you. You're the only one within your company, the decision maker, that everything comes down to you. And so having these people that you can rely on that have the knowledge that maybe isn't your strongest suit. It's
Yeah, it's
really
a
good
really
advice to have.
exciting time in fintech because I think that industries just outside of banking and insurance are starting to see the valuable opportunity of leveraging fintech initiatives. And so for us to come to the fashion industry and leverage some type of financial incentive model that utilizes payment rails and web databases in order to distribute commissions has really opened people's eyes into what fintech can do across industries. Like, how can we modify or incentivize consumer behavior towards better sustainable outcomes by leveraging fintech technology?
Yeah, because it does come down to that motivation. I, as a consumer, need to be motivated to not only learn about this process, to implement it in my life and make it a way of living, right?
Mhm.
Because the whole goal is to change for the better the way that we view our fashion purchases, just like it made a negative turn into fast fashion. And we want to make that turn back into sustainable fashion.
Yeah, and we see a lot of adoption in younger generations, younger millennials, Gen Z. They already have kind of the cultural ecosystem of sustainability that they're open to other models than the traditional take, make, waste philosophy that we've
Yeah.
been leveraging over the last few decades. So they have the technology intuition to be able to adopt these types of platforms and create a network effect of people who are utilizing our technology to not only move garments through multiple life cycles, but to really create a storytelling narrative around the life that those garments have lived. So we are leveraging social media validation through our platform to give insight into what are people doing with these products when they are quality products that endure the test of time and use, and being able to coincide that information with the actual physical product, I think is something really unique and innovative. And then we just grease the wheels with the financial incentive model.
We're all motivated by that, aren't we? That's something that really pushes people, especially in today's economy. It is a tough economy. We don't know if it's going to get worse or better in the near future. So we're all driven by that.
Yeah, what's nice about reusing the assets that we've already created through a manufacturing process, we are immune to things like tariffs. Being able to create resale models is a really sustainable business model in addition to being a sustainable environmental model.
That's exciting too, especially that's something that's on everybody's mind right now as well.
Mhm.
Those tariffs. Let's talk about the closed testing environment and what you're seeing there.
Right. So when a new software comes out, basically we design that software with a hypothesis in mind. And our hypothesis is consumers are going to be interested in resale royalties. And what we're doing in our closed beta test is opening our platform up to a small amount of users early adopters who are going to be the champions of our product, who are really interested in fashion and resale and nostalgia and storytelling. And they're going to use our platform and start giving us feedback. How intuitive is the user experience? Do the commissions incentivize behavior? Does it need to be more? How streamlined and frictionless is the shipping process? Do they enjoy receiving social media memories about this particular item from the past users, right? So, all of these hypotheses through which we are currently building the software protocol are going to be put out not necessarily to the public at large, but in a closed beta test where we're able to validate some of those assumptions and then pivot away from the ones that the consumers tell us that isn't really working for them.
Are you in the middle of a beta test phase right now?
Yeah. We're getting to that really quickly.
Are you looking for additional people to participate in it, or is it something that you have a specific group of people that you want to participate in?
Absolutely. If people are interested in giving feedback in our beta test, I would be more than willing to hear and introduce people to the platform.
And how would you like them to reach out about that? We
Yeah.
can include that on here if you'd
Yeah,
like.
you can find me on LinkedIn. It's my name, Lacie Thorne, and just message me and connect with me and let me know that you're interested.
That sounds great. Sounds like a really cool beta to be a part of, to be honest, and something that could be valuable to everyone.
Mhm.
Thank you for sharing that. Legislation compliance is a big issue and something that you need to be very cognizant of. And so, what does that look like, especially in the B2B2C SaaS platform world?
Yeah, so environmental legislation compliance can really vary by region, right? So here in the United States, we have a very flexible legislative compliance perspective when it comes to designing products from a sustainable perspective. A lot of that decision making power is left up to consumer buying habits. However, we see in Europe a lot of compliance legislation that requires companies to design products with the end of life use in mind. So, when we are trying to break into a new market, whether it's in Europe or even in California, where they have some emerging sustainability legislation, it's really helpful for us to find brands who are working within those spaces and are trying to comply with that sustainability legislation, and come to them as a service provider from a use standpoint. Say, we can help you comply with this legislative initiative and improve your carbon footprint at the same time.
And that's a win-win. I do find with a lot of my clients or colleagues that any type of regulation can be a stumbling block in so many ways because there's a lot to be aware of. And especially as you mentioned, if you're doing business globally, you have to be aware of what's happening again in each region. Make sure that you are compliant and have all of the T's crossed and I's dotted. So it can be a challenge, and you're solving that for people.
Well, I think when we're trying to modify consumer behavior, you can think of it as like the carrot and the stick, right? The carrot, we've
Mhm.
got our incentive model with regards to the commissions on resale. We have a really cool user experience that mimics social media. And all of a sudden, we're making secondhand the first choice for consumers. Well, we're also leaning into the stick, which is legislative compliance.
Yeah.
California just passed a bill called SB 707, which makes them have an extended producer requirement with regards to textiles in the state of California,
Mhm.
which is kind of similar to an extended producer responsibility with regards to batteries and mattresses. No longer are brands allowed to just have consumers throw those items into the waste stream in California.
Right.
So when we think about how important it is to modify consumer behavior, specifically in relation to the fashion industry, that carrot and stick approach can really start to make a big difference.
People are motivated by different things. And so some are motivated by rules and regulations. I'm kind of one of those people. And then there are those who are looking for the motivation. I have heard that some top tier brands, some of the luxury brands, in order to keep the value of their product, like to not only release a limited number, which, there's not a problem with that, but also if things don't sell within a specific period of time, rather than discounting them, they just end up trashing them,
Mhm.
and that ends up in the waste and landfills as well, right? Is that true?
Yeah, it is true. And it's interesting because again, we're playing with the elasticity of consumer perception in these conversations. And scarcity is something that consumers respond to, right? It's just the law of supply and demand in economics. So what brands will sometimes do is rather than discount their merchandise, which is perceived by a consumer as being value brand that has less value if it's constantly going on sale, they'll just incinerate that product in order to eliminate it in the market. And what's great is we have seen a great development in forecasting models, meaning sales forecasting, that is leveraging AI to help fashion brands that are anticipating demand in a certain product or a certain region, who are then putting orders in for thousands and thousands of units of apparel products to be manufactured. Those forecasting models are getting a lot more sophisticated using AI, with obviously with the goal of eliminating that need for waste disposal in that way.
When you were talking about that, I was thinking of that scarcity mentality, which we all have, right? We like to have the bag that no one else in our sphere of influence has, or the jacket, whatever it may be. And that actually can contribute. I think that scarcity mentality can contribute to what you are trying to do, because once one person has it and they feel maybe the novelty has worn off or they're not interested in it anymore, the next person gets to have it and it's still scarce, right? It's still something that there was a limited number in production, and that person then gets to have it for whatever time they feel like having it. So the psychology there still works.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that consumer psychology, specifically in the apparel industry, is really fascinating because effectively, we as consumers have undergone a decades long advertising campaign that has been convincing us that first purchase clothing, new clothing, is the only type of clothing that a self respecting person would wear, right? And we
Right.
are convinced of that message through advertising campaigns and billboards and making sure that we're seeing television commercials and influencers. But you have to think about the power dynamics behind that messaging. If brands are only getting paid at the original transaction point and they're completely losing out on the resale market, which is billions of dollars globally every year, of course they're going to put out advertising messaging that convinces you to come back to that original transaction point.
Yeah.
But what's really interesting is to think about if brands are participating in that resale model with getting a commission on every time that garment sells in the future, they're going to modify the way that they design those flows to make sure that they last as long as possible, to avoid those incidentals like tariffs and taxes, and making sure that they don't have this planned obsolescence that we see so common in fashion.
I think that that's appealing to so many people, and you can see both sides. You can see why those who are manufacturing the clothing feel the need to bring people back. That's how they stay in business. And so when we create a model like this that is beneficial to both parties, it changes the way everyone approaches both the manufacturing side and the end consumer side as well.
I'm interested to see, we've been convinced that associating celebrity or an aspirational lifestyle with a brand is something that convinces consumers to buy. And
Yeah.
we've also seen an iteration of that model with influencers who are now selling through social media channels. My hypothesis is if we can have a celebrity who is lending their influence to a variety of clothing in a brand, does that same influence extend when I am purchasing clothing secondhand? Am I excited and imbued with hope about my own aspirational lifestyle if rather than being inspired by a billboard, I'm looking at the life that this garment has lived before it arrived to my hands? My hypothesis is there's something in that statement that deserves further research and curiosity because it really puts the power of influencing consumers back into the hands of the people, right? I'm a person that does cool things. I travel, I lead a certain level of aspirational lifestyle to a niche community, I'm sure, as we all do. Does that influence extend into the purpose of resale the same way that a billboard advertisement extends to that first transaction level? It seems analogous, and I have a feeling that there is some level of truth to that. I'm excited to find out.
I would think so. I feel like that is so influential in the way that we make our decisions. And you have worked with these celebrities before in creating these lines of clothing for different retail locations, and you see the impact that that has, where that brand might sell better than, just the store brand or a typical everyday type of brand. So to me, it feels like it will translate, but time will tell, right? And we'll see the numbers coming in as this continues to move forward.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see, once we're out of our beta test, our intention is to grow the platform at that point. And we
Mhm.
have a couple of different sales strategies and a couple of different campus strategies where we're really looking forward to getting out the word. And at that point, where we're just trying to bring people onto the platform and introduce them to this new concept of what resale can be, as opposed to what it has been historically.
Yeah. And it is all about, doing that. Like you said, you've got your beta testing, you'll have the actual launch, and then taking that data that comes back in and learning from it, and then tweaking whatever your process is based on the feedback that you get. So I'm excited for you. I feel like this is going to be a really cool year ahead.
Yeah, I'm looking forward especially to finding out the metrics associated with the change in consumer behavior in relationship to
Mhm.
commissions, right? So
Yeah.
we as a marketplace are competing with other marketplaces who might have a different commission structure. And
Hmm.
so when we are looking at a way to take a certain level of commission and sprinkle it through the ownership lineage and have it go back to the brand, at what point does it take in order for people's anticipation of those future royalty sales to incentivize them into this flywheel effect of engagement, right? And so being able to kind of push the levers on that mechanism is something that I'm really looking forward to getting data about.
Yeah, that is exciting. And that is one of the cool things about having the technology component integrated with all of this is that you are able to get some of that real-time data to help inform you and make decisions going forward.
Mhm.
So, one more question for you, Lacey. I would like to know, as an entrepreneur, what type of advice do you have for others who are looking at a similar path?
Absolutely. I did not really start getting traction on my venture until I started creating a community of other innovators and entrepreneurs around myself. And it was through that process that I gained so much support, so much practice in it being able to just convey my ideas, the infrastructure of fundraising. How can different organizations be structured from an organizational capacity? Like, being able to start and launch a business entails so many unique skills that we don't entirely use in our day-to-day life, but finding your local entrepreneur center and starting to just talk about your idea, it is so terrifying in the beginning because people think you're crazy. People have so many ways to poke holes in your idea, and it's really easy to lose faith in your own concept. But if you are in a community of other innovators and entrepreneurs, they are so supportive. They give critical feedback. They make you better and they give you the confidence that you have to kind of follow that next bread trail of crumbs that it takes to get to the next step. And that's really all that it takes is like going and going and being so passionate about this solution that you have identified at this cross section of industry and consumer population that no one else has ever identified or thought of before. Find an innovator community of people who say, okay, you've woofed on that particular pitch. Let's get back in the arena. There's another one next week and I'll come and I'll support you.
That's excellent advice. That is one that I think is so easy for us to get tripped up in and listen to the everyday people who are not entrepreneurs, who are happier having maybe the stable income or the stable job, which there is nothing wrong with. I did that for years and years myself. but there is a different mindset. And so surrounding yourself with people with a similar mindset and who are positive about the path that you could take. That's really great advice. Thank you so much.
It has been truly my own benefit in hanging out with other people who see the world as it could be rather than as it.
Right? And then you're emboldened to start a company that is truly unique, that you have thought through so many of the ifs, ands, or buts that can happen that makes this something that is not only feasible, but that is appetizing to the different parties that need to be involved. So,
My other
congratulations. I'm just really excited to see what happens.
Thank you. My other piece of advice would be get
Yeah.
to market as soon as you can. Don't
Mm.
circle around in academic circles and theory and office discussions. Figure out a way to make a minimum viable prototype as soon as you possibly can and start testing that in the real world. I think so many times it's easy, myself included, for people to kind of become keyboard warriors and create endless pitch decks and endless different ways of theorizing about how this concept could be executed. And it's an emotionally safe space to be because nobody ever disagrees with me when I'm in my own head. Everybody's like, that's a great idea. But seriously, the sooner that you can get some level of iteration to market and actually start receiving feedback and receiving customer feedback on how to make your product better, what types of characteristics are they demanding? What kind of feedback are you receiving? That is when things start to get traction, and truly, the minute that you make your first sale, it's like a shark smelling blood in the water. Your whole brain just goes and says, I want to do that again and I want to make it better.
Oh, that's great. Thank you so much. I appreciate you joining the podcast today
And my pleasure.
and wish you the very best of luck with Fidgetals.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for watching our podcast today. I'm Kristen Nielsen. I'm the owner of Copper Canvas Ads Agency, and we partner with FinTechs to help them scale their business within a 12-month period. I've been in the industry for over 20 years, and I've seen how saturated the market can be, and therefore how difficult it can be to make your business stand out in a sea of other FinTechs that may look similar or maybe even slightly different. But how do you make yours stand out? How do you get your message to the right people and those with high buying intent? That's what Copper Canvas Ads Agency is here to do. We are a growth partner, and we take a deep dive into your business to really understand what your strong points are, where there may be areas of weakness, and how we can fill those areas of weakness and create a plan to move forward in a strong way and really scale. So if you are interested, simply go to our website, coppercanvasadsagency.com, and schedule a time. There are buttons right there on the front page for you to book a time, and then we'll love to talk to you and see what we're able to do together.